Hi guys, we're both students who are currently studying at Macquarie University. I'm completing a Bachelor of Medical Sciences. My name's Peta. This is Sarah. She's doing a double degree. It's a Bachelor of Law with a Bachelor of Science majoring in Human Sciences. Sarah, could you please tell us why you chose to study this degree at Macquarie?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So, like Peter said, I study a double degree in law and science, and I was always interested in sciences at school. So, for my HSC, I did chemistry and biology, but I did science all throughout primary school and the earlier years of high school as well. So, as well as chemistry and bio, you'll notice that I have quite two degrees that are quite different. So for my HSC, I picked a wide range of other topics as well to complement my sciences, like maths, English, history, and other things as well. So I chose my double degree because, like I said, I'm really interested in sciences, and as Peter said, I'm really interested in human sciences and medical sciences, so that's why I picked a major in human biology. So I picked two areas of study that interest me, and that way I can combine my passion for science and the law. So the reason why I chose Macquarie is I was actually an early entry student through the GLEP program, and I really liked that they recognised me for not just getting an ATAR and doing my HSC. They recognised my wide range of subjects, my extracurricular activities, and my leadership involvement in the community. So what was your journey like after high school, Peter? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So during high school, I did a little bit of everything and kind of loved a little bit of everything. So that was a bit confusing for me. I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do next. I knew I wanted to go to university, but I wasn't sure what. So I actually took a gap year. That was in order to save up to go to university because I actually grew up in rural New South Wales. In a small farm near Gunnedah. Some of you might know where that is. And so I actually did a gap year working on my parents' farm. So I chased cows around, I vaccinated them, I planted crops, all that sort of stuff. It was a lot of fun. And I actually had been offered a completely different degree to medical sciences. And I deferred that for the year. But during my gap year, I actually watched a documentary. It was on research into autism, into what causes it and how can we treat it. And it just really struck me because I was so amazed by the potential that this sort of research could have to change lives. The documentary gave me small snippets of what that could look like, and I kind of realised that this is one particular condition, I suppose, and there's so many more out there, so there's so much potential for research and to learn so much more about how we can treat people. And so from that, I then kind of went down the track of Bachelor of Medical Sciences because I thought I wanted to do the research side of medicine, and so that's why I went into medical sciences. And so throughout my time here, I've kind of been learning more and more about what I like. I did a human physiology subject. That's all about how the human body functions and interacts. And in particular, we looked at the cardiovascular system, and that really struck me. It was absolutely fascinating. And from that, I think I've learned perhaps that maybe I'm not necessarily going to go down the research pathway after all. A few things had to factor in that, and I'll talk a bit more about it later, but I'm actually thinking about something like diagnostic radiography. So that's all the imaging that goes on to look at what's going on in the human body and diagnosing things. So that's something that I'm looking to do down the future.
Fantastic. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, so what has university been like for you, Sarah?
Yeah, so university life's been great for me. I've only been here for almost 2 years now, so it hasn't been long. But in my time at Macquarie, I've gotten involved with some clubs and some interests of mine. So I'm involved with the Law Society, as well as I've joined the ski team, and I actually compete for the university in downhill skiing. So university is a great opportunity to explore some of your passions that are outside of your degree as well. I'm also involved with the Macquarie University Rotaract Club, and what we do is we organise a bunch of community initiatives and campaigns raising awareness for issues that we care about. In terms of my actual studies and the subjects I've been doing, it's been really interesting for me because every semester, or like a term at school, I study a combination of law subjects and science subjects. And my favourite thing to do is try and draw the connections between them. So for example, at the moment, I'm studying medical anthropology and tort law, which is all about what happens to people if they do bad things that society tells them we can't do. And there are so many parallel connections that I can draw between how different cultures see different types of medical systems and the way that the law interacts with that. So that's been my favourite thing at university so far. My I'll tell you a little bit more about my project for that class, actually.
Yeah.
So what we actually got to do is we picked a disease or an illness that was really interesting to us. So we got to pick anything we liked, and what we did is we analysed online forums to explain how people in different cultures experience that disease and how it is culturally shaped.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Okay, so Peter, I've heard you've had a few scholarships in your time at university. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Well, I definitely can. And I do want to say thank you for sharing that, Sarah, because one thing about university is the experience can be so different for each individual. So Sarah's experience is quite different from my own, but we can definitely learn so much from one another. So just about the scholarships that I received during my time at university. The ones I thought I'd talk about were actually summer research project scholarships. So university holidays are awesomely long and it's really wonderful, but there's also opportunities offered by universities for students who are really interested in research to actually undertake a few weeks of research during that time. So at the end of my first year, I did a research project. It was with the Chemical and Biomolecular Sciences department, and what we were doing, we were looking at actually what kind of goes on in melanoma cells, so those cancer cells, what sort of signalling happens to cause them to keep on multiplying. An interesting thing about melanoma is they actually do have some drugs that kind of block one of those signalling pathways, but the problem is another pathway then gets activated. And so that research was looking into that, and it's ongoing, but I was just able to kind of see what that was like and be a small part of that. At the end of my second year, I undertook another research project, quite different to the first. The first one was very much lab skills. The second one was more of a clinical type one. We were looking at blood pressure monitoring, and I was kind of in charge of this project where people had to wear 2 portable blood pressure monitors. That means they can just walk around, do their day-to-day things while wearing these blood pressure monitors. And what we had to do, what my participants had to do, is they had to wear 2 of them at once because they were 2 different, from 2 different companies, and they did things differently. So actually seeing whether the 2 measurements were kind of interchangeable between the 2, despite the fact that they used different sort of logarithms to get their blood pressure calculations. And my patients had to wear these monitors for 7 hours straight, and I had programmed them to go off every 15 minutes. And when you get your blood pressure taken, you have to stay still, you're not meant to talk, because anything like that can actually make the reading inaccurate. So my patients had to go around and stop every 15 minutes. And I did it on myself as well. And I was actually trying to cook an egg, and the blood pressure monitor went off, and I was watching my egg get overcooked, which was really sad, but a lot of fun. And so through these research projects, I actually learned a little bit about myself and what I wanted to do. So the first one was not very people-oriented. And for me, I actually really want to work with people. And so I learned perhaps that, if I do go into research down the track, I'd like it to be one that actually is more clinical, so that has more of a people sort of focus. Yeah. So that was the benefit of sort of doing those research scholarships. And I would say that if you do go into a science degree, I'd really highly recommend these, because you can learn so much. I learned things that then later on came up in later subjects, and I was like, I've already actually learned a bit about this. But you learn a lot about what you'd like to do, and you actually get to work with some really inspiring people who are the top of their field, and who are thinking of new questions to ask and seek answers to. So I really appreciated that. Yeah. What's next for you though, Sarah?
Yeah, that's really insightful, Peter, that you were saying you found your way through research projects and that. So I'm in my second year, so I recognise that I have a lot of learning to do and a long way to go in terms of thinking about what I want to do after uni, especially with 2 different areas of study. So at the moment, I'd really like to go into practice law, but with a focus and turning my passion for science into something of a practice area for me. So something like policy development for the government in terms of developing health recommendations and strategies that are more appropriate, and my focus on the law will help me do that. So that's sort of where I'm looking for at the moment when I finish my degree in another 3 years. But for the moment, I wanted to give you some advice that I wanted to impart to you guys, because it wasn't all that long ago that I was in your position back at school, choosing my subjects or choosing what I wanted to do at uni. So my first piece of advice is get involved. Get involved at school. Get involved if you get a gap year opportunity. Get involved there. Get involved at uni if and when you go to uni. There are all different clubs to engage with your passions and your interests. Get involved with opportunities and classes that you can do. That would be my first piece of advice. My second is that it's okay if you don't know what you want to do. And even Peta said that she changed her mind during her gap year. So that's okay too. But I will say, often we say we don't know what we want to do, but deep down we do know what we want to do. Think about what interests you and what you like the best, and go with that, because at uni, once you get there, you'll learn so much more about yourself and what you're interested in and what you want to do with the rest of your life. So the other piece of advice I would say is, as a woman embarking on a science, in a science field, I'm sure, Peter, you'd agree, it's a male-dominated industry, but don't be afraid. There are support networks out there, and don't be afraid to ask for support. And if the current support networks are not what you're looking for, ask for help. Find some more support, whether it's from family or teachers or friends that support you. That's the way to go.
Fantastic. I'd also like to add some advice, and it's really great hearing Sarah's advice, because it's funny how they kind of relate. As far as if you do decide to go to university, as far as choosing what you study, I totally agree with Sarah, and that's something that you love, because that's what you're going to want to spend time on. If it comes down to choosing one degree over another, or even another university over another, the thing that I've kind of learned since coming to university is that on the website they do list all their degrees, and they kind of give you this sort of blurb about the degrees, and that's really useful, but they also give you a bit of an outline of what you would study in that degree. So that's the specific subjects that you'd be doing, and I'd really highly recommend going through and actually reading up on each of those if you are having trouble choosing, because that'll really tell you what's at the heart of the degree. And it's so important that you pick what suits you, and that's a really great place to start for that. Cool. And then the other thing is, which kind of links to what I was saying before about looking for opportunities. And Sarah also said this. So there is a lot of opportunities to do more things than just your degree. Your degree offers you so many opportunities and experiences, but university in general has so many extracurricular activities. So that could be something like joining a society. There's so many different societies. For me, actually, my friends founded the Medical Sciences Society. It hadn't existed beforehand, and it was so fantastic that they did, because it was a really great way for us as students studying the same thing to connect and to exchange textbooks, talk about different subjects, get a bit of tips about whether that one would suit me or not from someone else's personal experience. So something like that, keep your eye out for those sort of things. Also things like I was saying, research projects over the summer, because the summers are months long, so taking 4 to 6 weeks out can be a really great way to kind of keep thinking over the things that you've been learning, keep applying them, and learning so much new stuff. So that's another thing that I'd probably say. And the last one is also just enjoy the people around you and the experience. So something that I've loved about doing science is the people that I've met, and in particular the women that I've met. They're all so different and have such great sort of ideas of things they'd like to do in the future, and I've really appreciated that. And the other one is actually the academics that I've met. They're absolutely fantastic. And so I'd say if you do come to university, really utilise them. They're so often so willing to speak to you and share that from their own experiences and offer wisdom and advice on those sort of things. Those are the sort of things I'd probably
That's some really good advice, Peter. There's one thing that I'd also like to add is, with science, as you know, there are so many branches of science. If you do even a generic Bachelor of Science degree, there are so many majors. Yeah. So be adventurous with picking your science and what you want to do, and be playful with it as well. There are so many different combinations and different avenues that you can take. Yeah. I think it's really important to think outside the box and look around and see what's out there.
Fantastic. Well, that's all we've kind of got structured more formally about things we wanted to share with you. We would love for you guys to ask us questions now if you have any. There's so much more perhaps experiences we could share with you or hear about your experiences. So if you have any questions, you can either shoot them through on the online chat. Otherwise, you can take your mic off mute and send them through via there. And we'll just do our best to answer them. That's a really good question, because that's sort of the question I've been trying to answer throughout my degree. And I feel like I didn't speak as clearly as I would have liked on it before, so thank you for asking that. So like I did say, I went to medical sciences because I really wanted to look into the research and the potential that it has. What I've found throughout that is that for me, even though it does have so much potential, I found it was a little bit withdrawn from the actual patient, which is the challenging thing, and that's why it's great we're all so different in that there's people that would really be drawn to that and thrive in research, but there's people that perhaps would prefer more patient interaction. I kind of actually found for myself that I found it a bit hard to be a bit removed from the people. And so I probably am actually looking to go into something that's more people oriented. But in the meantime, actually I'm looking to get some experience in research, and at some point down the track I would consider doing further postgraduate study. I mentioned before the Masters of Diagnostic Radiography. So that's very much kind of, it's still very intellectually challenging in that you actually learn how to diagnose things that you're imaging. You learn all the physics of how to do all the different imaging. And it also has that patient interaction, because I'm really kind of keen to be able to talk to people and through that to kind of change their experience of that, of kind of going through perhaps it can be quite a stressful situation of getting something imaged because maybe something's wrong, there's a lot of questions. So I kind of want to be able to be there for them on that side of things as well. So as I mentioned before, I was very broad. So let's see, I did chemistry. That was actually my only science subject, which was quite funny. I went to quite a small school, and so some things were on the same stream as the other. I think that's the right terminology. And so biology was actually on the same stream as extension mathematics, and I really loved mathematics. And so I did the mathematics over the top. So I did 3-unit maths. I did English, of course. I did modern history, PhD, and studies of religion. So it was literally a little bit of every single thing, which, you know, for me actually wasn't a disadvantage coming to university. I think if you're worried, I didn't actually pick a lot of, say, science subjects, but I'm really interested in doing science, will that be okay? Macquarie University, for example, the sort of first year units are kind of able to be picked up by people who didn't do it for the HSC. So I did first year biology. I remember hearing other people say, I kind of, you know, this is a bit familiar, I did this in the HSC, whereas I was there like, I'm learning this for the first time. And I absolutely loved it, and it wasn't a problem. So if you're worried about anything like that, I mean, by all means pick them if it's what you want to do, but if it's kind of, you've already made your choice and you're like, I kind of wish I picked more, the unis have support structures in place and units in place that will help you make that transition if you haven't got as much background knowledge.
I actually did a really similar HSC profile to you, Peter. I did, for sciences, I did chemistry and biology. I also did 2-unit maths and English, of course. And then I also did PDHP and ancient history as well as extension history. So again,
that's very similar.
One in almost every faculty, just to keep my options open as well. There was an underlying tone of interest in science, absolutely. But yeah, I wasn't entirely sure. So I took one from each and sort of played it by ear.
Unfortunately, it's been a while for me since I did my HSC, and I've been seeing a few students this year and realising that, it does feel like a long time ago. Tips for studying for the HSC. Well, first thing is if you still have the choice of the subjects, it is taking that step to choose things that interest you and that you enjoy. As far as studying, it's a matter of pacing yourself, I think. Rest, even though maybe it doesn't feel like you're immediately learning things, is so valuable for when, like refreshing your mind for when you do then go to study. You're able to take more things in. So it's actually a matter of kind of balancing that, because I think it's actually really great to make sure you're still seeing your friends, your family, resting, and then also doing the study, because we do need to study. But it's about that balancing. That's probably a huge one for me. Yeah.
And my biggest piece of advice would be really similar to that, is that look outside the HSC as well for opportunities to extend yourself, do unique things that sets you apart from the crowd, because at the end of the day, at the end of your year when you finish your HSC, you're going to get a mark, and that's fantastic, and that's going to reflect all the hard work you've done in your HSC. But it's all those extra things that are going to help set you apart and help make you a well-rounded human being that are ultimately going to be valuable to you long after your HSC. When picking subjects for year 11 and 12, I would, if you know what you want to do, then I think that's a really good starting point. Picking subjects that reflect your interests. If you know, you girls are probably all interested in science if you're tuning in. So if you're interested in science, go for it, because it's going to be easy to study. You're going to enjoy it, and it's probably going to reflect what you're going to do at uni. So that's a bonus too. But again, if you're not sure, it worked out great for us. do a little bit of everything. Keep your options open, do things that interest you, and yeah, don't be afraid to be a little bit adventurous with something that you like, but you're not sure if you're going to explore as a career path necessarily.
Yeah, and just don't be... My advice probably would be don't be too tied up over like, oh no, if I didn't pick that subject, doesn't mean I can't do that degree. A lot of degrees have recommended knowledge, but it's not prerequisite. So if you haven't done it, it doesn't mean you're immediately like not able to get into that degree. The other awesome thing is that once you're at university, there is flexibility, say at Macquarie University for internal transfer. So that's from moving from one degree to another. If you realise your interests are different to what you thought they would be, that can be a really great way to kind of just to reassure you that your subjects won't necessarily determine your choices. They won't limit them in most cases. So just keeping that in mind, and like Sarah said, following what your interests are. Yeah.
For me, it was a little bit of both actually. I didn't actually do legal studies for my HSC, so I can't say that really had an influence on me to pick my degree, but my science teachers were definitely really encouraging about me pursuing biology, which was my main interest, but as well chemistry as well. They were really supportive of me, and when they knew that I wanted to study science at university but wasn't sure what I wanted to combine it with or how I wanted to go about it, they were really open to like exploring it in different ways, because I wasn't sure that just a pure science degree was for me.
Yeah, I really like that question, and it's kind of caused me to reflect in a way I haven't in a long time. I did have a science teacher early on in high school who was fantastic, and so I think that kind of shaped what I did later on in high school. And I also had a mathematics teacher in my later years. Actually had him for every single year of high school except for one, and I was actually the only girl in my maths class in year 11 and 12. The rest of them were boys, but I suppose the way he kind of ran the class meant that I felt totally like welcome to be there. It was actually like the funnest. Though they always watched NRL every Monday. They watched all the recaps, and I was like, but anyway, that was quite funny. But he was, just the way that they like didn't treat me any different. Well, which was fantastic. Even though I was only female in the class. The other one that I've just kind of reflected was actually my mum. She did agricultural science in high school, and she pretty much is like the partner in crime on the farm. She knows everything science on the farm. She was in charge of all, like, she did chemical sales back when she was single, I suppose, and then she married my dad, who was a farmer, and because of that she knows so much about how cropping works and all the sort of different chemicals and how they work for the different crops, and making sure that we're not like contaminating the environment and everything. So she's a really inspiring woman for me in science. She knows her stuff so well, and it was just like really great, because she really encouraged me then in my interest in medical science. Even though it's different, agricultural, medical, there's a lot of the same science underneath all that chemistry and biology. Yeah.
No, not at all, to be perfectly honest. I think it's a little bit of a different story in some other fields of science, because I know some of my colleagues and friends that I study with, they do really notice the male domination in a lot of their subjects. But for myself personally, no, I don't notice it at all. Generally, there is a bit of a disparity in how many females compared to males take science subjects, but no, I don't personally notice. How about you, Peter?
Yeah, I actually haven't noticed it either.
Yeah.
And a lot of my lecturers, conveners, all those sort of people have actually been females who are kind of at the top of what they do in their research. They do on the side of teaching us, and they themselves are really inspiring and really lovely. They remember your face, which I remember just being surprised by, because university is a lot bigger than uni, but to then still be recognised as an individual for me was a real encouragement.
Definitely. Yeah. They're really great role models to have. I wouldn't, no, to be perfectly honest. So I studied chemistry and bio, to recap. I wouldn't study physics. I actually did maths and dropped it for year 12 because I wasn't particularly gifted in the maths department. But I have actually gone on to study maths at university a little bit. And I've actually done okay, which is really great. So that was a bit of encouragement for myself. But no, what about you?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So the reason why I didn't do physics was modern history was on the same stream for me. And it just like piqued my interest so much. But perhaps, since then I've realised perhaps not as a career path, but more as like something I'd really love to learn more about on this side. So actually for me, potentially, yes, I would have done physics because I actually did have to do a physics unit this year at Macquarie University. And like I did say, that was like possible to be able to do it without having done it in year 12. But I think perhaps I would have been able to understand it and grasp it a bit quicker if I had done it in year 12. And particularly for me now, as I'm interested in diagnostic radiography, which has actually got a lot of physics in it, I think it could have been good. But the thing is that, there's still opportunities to kind of pick up the knowledge if you don't do it in the HSC. But if you are interested in something that does have more of a physics side to it, then that could be really great to consider physics in your HSC.
To study law, there are actually no prerequisites. Like I said, I didn't do legal studies. And even English, which comes in handy writing all the essays that you do need to do for law, it's not particularly necessary. So nothing in particular. You need an open mind and a good mark, that's all.
So as I was saying about, was actually that documentary, which is interesting. I don't think I expected to kind of be so changed in what I wanted to do by documentary. But yeah, once I kind of knew I wanted to do medical research, it was a matter of looking at what the different universities offered in that area. And I'd probably go back and kind of emphasise my advice about looking at the degree and the nitty-gritty of the different units, and also the opportunity for research on the side to compare, because I think depending on the individual, different things will suit them. So I think it's really about doing your research and being also asking questions, go to info days, talk to students from those degrees, all those sort of things. Yeah.
That's a really good question, and it's one that I get asked on a weekly basis because it is such an odd degree option. Now, I'm really passionate about science, and that's ultimately what I want to pursue, but I see my law degree as a really good opportunity to make a change within the science, in the science field. So I'm really passionate about public health and health policy. So law is a really great avenue with a background in science studies to combine them. The other option that I'm also considering is going into practice as a solicitor, but with a focus on medical law, things like negligence and that sort of thing, so litigation mostly. So yeah, I hope that answers your question about that.
Well, yeah, for me, I do think I would like to do some research for a little while and have a bit of a break from study and also use the skills that I've kind of gained and put them into practice. But afterwards, I think, yes, for me, I would be looking to do further study and potentially the masters of like something like radiography. Yeah. What about you, Sarah?
So similar story for me. When I finish my bachelor's, I definitely want to go out and get some work experience and more importantly, learn about what exactly I want to do and what areas that I want to work in. And from that, I do want to specialise probably in science again to upskill again and broaden my understanding and area of science to complement whatever I do with law and science together.
That's so good.
So per week is probably the easiest way to answer that question. That's a really hard question to answer. So every week I'll tell you a little bit about sort of a uni week in that case, if that sort of answered your question. So I'd say for a normal uni week, Macquarie is really flexible, which is fantastic because we both work and so we can build our studies around that, which is fantastic. So in general, we have lectures and we have tutorials that we attend at university. So to both hear and learn the content in the lecture and then apply it and talk about it in tutorials. We then have assessment tasks as well. So we need to allocate time each week to get our assessments tasks done and study the content for that week. So I'd say that's sort of what university incorporates, and it really does change. Some weeks you'll spend all week studying like crazy for an assessment task, and other weeks you'll have very little study to do. So it's really flexible, and it changes depending what degree you're doing, what week
Subjects
of semester
and
you're
things
in,
like that.
what subjects, how many subjects you do. So it's
Yeah.
a really hard question to answer.
Yeah, well, I'll add to that, particularly for a science degree. Often you are looking perhaps a few more hours a week, just contact hours on campus because of practicals. For practicals at Macquarie University, they're usually 3 hours a week or 4 hours a week, or sometimes 4 hours each fortnight, depending on the subject. So there's a little bit more contact there, but that's really great. I love practice because you actually get to do things with your hands and put into practice what you've been learning. And the other thing is, if you are worried about how much time you have to allocate to study, is Sarah mentioned it, is different kind of levels of loads of study. So you can actually study part-time. And so like a part-time load's 1 to 2 subjects per semester, full-time load's 3 to 4. And so if you are worried about how you would cope with the demands of study, there's actually the opportunity to take less subjects, and there's that sort of flexibility. So it really does vary. I think there's still definitely time to do other things in life other than study, which is very important.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. You can transfer from one university to another. It'll depend on how you're going, the university you want to do, the degree you're going from and to, and all those sort of things. But it's definitely possible, and people do that. Yeah. Awesome. Well, we will probably wrap it up there. We want to say thank you so much for chatting with us. We've both found it really fun.
We've had a great time.
Yeah, and great to share with you. And we do just want to say that, continue to seek out what you love, and just find out, keep trying different things, and just persevering in what you'd like to do. Yeah.